Welcome back to Planning for Private Practice. I'm Antoinette, psychotherapist in private practice. Today we're going to work on CPT codes and determining diagnoses for different clients. So I am a generalist practice psychotherapist, meaning I cover kind of all ranges and bases and things like that. And so I think it would be helpful to anyone that's planning private practice to have a little bit of a base knowledge on diagnosing and using CPT codes. So first, we're going to start with CPT codes. What are those? Those are the codes that you use to determine the length of time for your session. So when you're going to do your billing, there's the CPT code that goes along with the diagnosis code, and the two of them go together on your billing sheet to get submitted to the insurance companies. And they all have different rates based on your insurance company. The first CPT code, and these are all universal codes, is the 90791. That's your initial assessment, initial diagnosis, or intake session code. And that doesn't have a time frame on it, so that's up to your discretion. But we all know it takes at least an hour to get a good basic foundation on the first session. So those are typically 1 hour sessions. So that's your 90791 code. The next code is the 90832 CPT code. That's your 30-minute session code. And that 30 minutes can range anywhere, here's the fun piece, between 16 minutes and 37 minutes. So there are those of us that work in facilities doing psychotherapy, and sometimes you can only get a client to sit still for about 15 to 20 minutes, and in that 15 to 20 minutes you've got to get whatever you can get. Sometimes you could just be checking in to see how they're doing, following a crisis or a readjustment back into the facility from a nursing home, from not a nursing home, but from the hospital or some other place. So that's where you would use a 30-minute session or a 90832, and that can range anywhere between 16 minutes and 37 minutes for the session. Within that time frame, you also have a lot of time to do your documentation, which is why there's that range. So say you saw them for 17 to 20 minutes and you took another 5 to 7 minutes to write your note, that will constitute a 30-minute session, because it took you 30 minutes to do all the work necessary for that one client. The next code is the 90834 code, which is a 45-minute session code, and that time ranges between 38 and 52 minutes. Then you have your 90837. That's a 60-minute session, which is the easiest and most popular to use. That's between 53 and 60 minutes. So say you have, typically I have, and a lot of others will have, a 50-minute session. Then you have that other 10 minutes that gets you to the 60 minutes to kind of process your session, do your note for your session, and kind of think about where you want to go in your next session with that client. The next code after that will be your 90846. This code, again, doesn't really have a time construct to it. It's to your discretion, but it's going to be a flat rate from the insurance company. So this is the code, the 90846, is family with the patient. So say you typically see your client on an individual basis, but for whatever reason, a family member wanted to join in on the session for the whole entire session, half of the session. So you want to build that code, the 90846. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Backtrack. 90846 is family without the patient. So if you have a client, some of you, I'm sure, working with young children or teenagers, will sometimes have a session with just the mom or the dad or the legal guardian. So to bill the insurance company for that client, you would have to use the 90846 code, because that's the session that's for the patient, but it's with a family member and the patient is not present. I hope I made that clear. The next one, the 90847, is the family with the patient. So typically, you're seeing your client on an individual basis. A family member, legal guardian, or whomever decided to take part in the session, whole session, half session, a few minutes of the session, but pretty much enough of the session to where your note is going to reflect that they were present. You want to use the 90847 code to show the insurance company that this session was not just a client by itself, but with the family member present. Again, that's going to be a flat rate code, so the time that you use on that session is up to your discretion. Another code that's going to be used by some, not all, is the 90853, which is a group session code. So if you're doing like a support group or something like that, that's the code you would use. You would have everyone sign in, and if they all have insurance, I've had this experience in facilities again, family members of the residents. So the resident insurance would be billed for a group session, which is a flat rate, but group sessions, are usually only an hour long. But it's a nice way to get reimbursed for your time if you're providing a support group to a specific group of people, either in the community or in a nursing home, assisted living, so on and so forth. If there's insurance providers available, you want to use that group session code to get reimbursed for your time. Again, that's a 90853 group session code. It's going to be one flat rate. So if you have 5 people that have health insurance out in the community, but they're coming into a grief support group or family caregiver support group or parent support group, if they have insurance, you collect all their insurance, and the insurance companies are going to reimburse you a flat rate for the time you did that support group. So that's a nice way of kind of earning some extra income, because you see a larger group of people for the same 1 hour time. So if the insurance company's rate is $50 for the group session, that's $50 times however many people are in your group. I'd say that's a great way to earn some extra cash on the side, right? The other code that we have is the 90839, which is a crisis code. So if you need to see your client or whomever and they're in a crisis, so this would be in addition to your regular group session. Insurance companies typically allow a once a week regular session. But say something happens, your client is in a crisis and they need to see you a second time. Well, you'll have to use this crisis modifier, the 90839, and it has to be for at least 60 minutes. It could be longer, but at least 60 minutes if they're in crisis, so that you can bill the insurance company for an additional visit that week if the client was in crisis. This last one is a plus 90785, which is a complexity add-on. I don't have to use that because I use a web-based system to do my billing. So that's kind of like already, most of these will be pre-populated into any system that you use electronically. They're there, and sometimes they'll explain to you if there's a complexity, like if there's a hospice complexity, or you're visiting someone in a hospital complexity. That kind of is where that code will come in. Again, I haven't had to use it, but I have noticed with the virtual sessions that if I plug it in as a virtual session, my system automatically adds that complexity number on. When I go into the billing settings, I'll see the regular CPT code, the 90832, so to speak, plus the additional complexity for it being a virtual visit. So both of those will be on the billing sheet in addition to the diagnosis code, which is where we're going to go to next. So we all are familiar with the DSM-5. Don't need to go over that if you're in the mental health field. The other piece that I make use of when doing my diagnosing is the icd10data.com website. Fantastic website. It houses all of the billable diagnosis in the United States, because it's the AMA, I think, is who puts it together. I could be wrong about that, don't quote me. But so I have my handy dandy laptop next to me. I'm gonna go on line. Oh, come on. Okay, so it's ICD as in dog data. I'm sorry, ICD 10, the number 10 data data.com. I'll put the link in the description. .com, and it's an addition. It's like the web-based version of this kind of. So the DSM has all the diagnostic criteria. It goes into details about why criteria is what it is, so on and so forth. But the DSM-5 does not tell you what the billable codes for the year are. ICD-10 data will tell you if the code that you are trying to use is indeed a billable code. The codes change every so often, not very often, but they do change every now and again, and insurance companies as a whole will decide that a code is outdated and no longer billable. So you do not want to bill for a code that you're not going to get paid for. So to save time with insurance companies, what you want to do is, if you have a diagnosis code for a client that comes in, say, I'll give you the example that I had trouble with, which will lead me into something else. I had a client come in with marital issues. The person was stressed out and overwhelmed, had difficulty concentrating and focusing at work because things weren't going right in the home. So I go to ICD-10 data and type in marital, and up will pop the diagnosis code for marital issues. It says disruption of family by separation or divorce. And then right below it, it also says disruption of family by separation or divorce, divorce of family, so on and so forth. But there's also another one for family discord, because this person wasn't divorced or separated. He was on the verge of it. But there's also another one. Okay, there we go. So the ICD code for disruption, it says disruption of family by separation and divorce, but if you read down below, there's a little hanger with more information. You'll see various descriptions: disruption of family by separation due to divorce. At the bottom it says marital estrangement, which is what would fit his category. And on here, if the arrow on the left side of the diagnosis is green, that means it is a billable code for the current year. If it is red, that means it is not a billable code for the current year. So I saw that it was green and said, okay, well, that's what I'm going to use. So I go to my system, I'm filling out my assessment form, and I put in this ICD code of Z63.5 because it fits the description of marital estrangement. Then I proceed to do my notes and let it make sure that all of the information I put in my note reflected the discord with the marriage and how it was affecting his daily functioning, creating stress, anxiety, and all the other things that were happening. So what do? I send it in. Insurance companies quickly let you know when they're not going to pay you for something. However, when they are going to pay you, it takes a little bit longer. So I would say probably in 10 days after me submitting that bill, it was returned with a rejection. So I'm puzzled, like, okay, well, the ICD said that it was a billable code, and I know marital discord and dysfunction is also in the DSM-5. And so I called the insurance company. I speak to someone and I asked why wasn't it paid, and she explained that, well, we don't pay for that code. And I said, but it's a current active code that is billable. She said, yes, it may be, but we do not have to cover that code. So private insurance companies can choose which codes they do and do not want to cover. So even though it's a legitimate code, it's in the DSM-5, it's also on ICD-10data.com, the insurance company decides, like, yeah, we don't pay for marital issues. That's not our concern. That's not what we're covering. So I say to the woman, okay, well, what should I do to get reimbursed for this? She simply said, we need a new diagnosis code. Light bulb. Oh, okay. So I go back into the ICD-10 data and see what other information is in there. I also use my DSM-5 under marital discord and try to kind of pull together, okay, well, what other diagnosis code can I use? And I'm sure some of you, your wheels are already spinning, like, oh, okay. Well, what I did was I decided, like, okay, well, the marital issue is creating a stress-like state for him. So I said, I wonder if he would fit the criteria for acute stress. What do? I type in acute stress into ICD-10 to make sure that, of course, it's a billable code. I go to my DSM-5 under acute stress and see what the criteria is. And what I do is I take information from ICD-10 data, try saying that fast 3 times. What the criteria that they have in there, match it up to what is in the DSM-5. I rework my assessment to reflect the stress and how the acute stress is affecting the person's daily functioning. So I now have acute stress Acute stress reaction is F43.0. It's green, so I know that it's billable. And it says acute situational disturbances, acute stress disorder. And so, situational disturbances, his marriage right now is in shambles, and that's a situational disturbance. Bing! We have ourselves a new diagnosis. So I redo the work in my system to make acute stress the primary diagnosis and make the marital issue thing the secondary diagnosis. I submit it. Of course, I don't hear anything in 10 days. So I know, like, okay, I guess they're going to pay for it 25 days later or however long it takes. I got billed for it. No issues, no questions, no thoughts about it again. So that's just a word to the wise. If when in doubt, rework the diagnosis. You can put something that's related to the diagnosis, like the acute stress, because that's what was happening, and use what you think they walked in for as the secondary diagnosis, because the insurance companies are looking for the primary diagnosis to pay you for. So as long as your primary diagnosis reflects what's going on, what brought them to your office, and that's why I say use the ICD-10 data website as well as the DSM-5 to formulate your diagnosis. You want to use the language from both of those places. When I do my assessment on the computer, there's a place for your diagnosis and also a place for, I call it, your justification of your diagnosis. And when you are justifying your diagnosis, you're not writing your whole assessment in there. You're pretty much just throwing in some things to let the insurance company know that these are the things that contribute to this person's current state of being, why they're in therapy, and why this code fits their needs. So that's where it's great to just take the language from the ICD-10 data website, along with language that's in the DSM-5 under the diagnosis that you are looking to use. You pop that language in there, and you'll not likely have any issues with billing from the insurance companies or otherwise, because you have now properly validated your client's diagnosis. And I think that's it for the day. So if you guys have any comments, questions, or any particular questions that you want to ask me about this topic or any other topic regarding planning for private practice, be sure to just send me a message in the comments, or you can send me a message via email through my website, thevisitingcounselorllc.com. I will be glad to share my knowledge with anyone that's planning to that is trying to plan private practice, because I love it. I think it's great and exciting, and I think we all should do it if we're able to. I think that's all for today. Thanks for listening. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment down below. That we may all grow together as a community. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.